Good evening. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Tape. I'm your host, Zadek Kentibedian, joined by my co-host, TJ. Very happy to have you here, man. This guy, he is a pro. He is one of the best, and I genuinely mean that when it comes to the college game, this guy is the best, one of the best to learn from. I highly suggest you follow this guy wherever you possibly can. Go to his YouTube page, follow him wherever you can. This is a really awesome, just an opportunity for all of us to learn more. And what we're doing today is we're going to be doing a Senior Bowl preview. 4 players each we've selected. We're going to go through it. It's coming up next week. We're all the whole 32 Beat Writers team is going to be down there every single day on the sideline. We're going to be, talking to the players. We're going to be recording clips. We're going to be putting those highlights up, and then we're going to be doing daily breakdowns, I believe, of each day, what we learned, what we saw. And real quick, I will say, if you want to subscribe to the website, we are having a promotion. If you go to the website and you type in Senior Bowl, you will get 1 month free from the day that you type in that code. I highly suggest that you do that because the offseason is where this company actually, we are the best. And I think we are awesome in the offseason. We provide all the edges. We provide all the news sources. We're talking to every single beat reporter throughout the season for college and the NFL. So be sure to do that. And TJ, how are you doing today? You ready to talk some Senior Bowl advice?
Dude, I'm pumped up. One, it's cool to be on Beyond the Tape and have a host welcome me into the show. Like I'm not getting used. I haven't gotten used to that, so that's very fun for me in and of itself. But dude, man, I'm excited for you to see the Senior Bowl. It's a really cool experience. It's one part eye opening just to see how it all actually. You hear about it, but then once you're there, you're like, oh, this is how it actually all comes together. And then you just meet so many cool people down there too. So it's gonna be awesome. And then it kind of helps that I've been there once, and Matt's pretty familiar with it too. So like last year, me and Zach were all just like, okay, what do we do? So it'll be cool to go down for a second time, have a little bit of a clearer mind of what we should be doing. And dude, it's another really good group. Like it's an exciting class. It's not quite as loaded offensive line wise, but there's some interesting receivers we're going to talk about, and it's a loaded pass rush unit. So it's going to be a really fun group to talk about. And like you said, dude, plug in. This is the time to join 32 Beat Writers with the website. 1 month from the time you sign up, my draft analysis, your fantasy stuff. I said it multiple times on the last couple of pods. You won me one of my leagues, so I'm not afraid to pimp out your work there. And not to mention Jesse Minter just got hired as the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. Who's his offensive coordinator? We're going to have you guys all covered on that standpoint, keeping you tapped in and what that means for fantasy, draft, larger league implications. So now's the best time, and you can't beat free. So go make it happen.
Dude, TJ, you're so good. He's so good, guys. I love having him on. He just delivers so well. I love it.
No.
All right, let's jump right into it. This is a guy I've really become fond of, Elijah Surratt. And TJ, I saw in your latest mock, I watched that. Really great job, by the way. You had him going, I believe, to the Saints as opposed to on your previous mock where you had him going to the Raiders. I kind of like that. I like that setup for Olave. You mentioned that it kind of gets Olave free to do his own thing on his side of the field. You said you like him more of as a day 3 pick. I think that's a possibility, honestly, because, as we know, so if you don't know who Elijah Surratt is right now, Indiana wide receiver, Fernando Mendoza's, I think, probably favorite weapon on the field. He is a traditional split end. He isn't a player with top end speed. And I'll just read you guys what I wrote from my evaluation of him. He isn't a player with top end speed, but he is a fast player for his size. He is very good at selling vertical routes. He possesses plenty of play strength and evasive qualities to shed tacklers. He understands how to stack releases as the game goes on. So what that means is that he's basically playing chess with his opponents, with his DBs that he's matched up against. He knows how to kind of play mind games with his footwork as he releases from the line of scrimmage. He's strong at running slants and boxing out defenders. He has the tools to deal with jam versus press coverage, and he's very willing in the blocking game. And I think, he is a very high motor. He's a very high motor player. And if I could think of a player to comp him to, it's actually not an offensive player. It's a defensive player from a couple years ago that came out of Alabama, Brian Branch, who I feel like I'm watching Brian Branch when I watch Surratt just on the other side of the field. Sure. And I see that come out in every single aspect of his game. I've dubbed Elijah Surratt as Slant Boy 2.0 because this guy, he if we're talking stats, right? Yards per route run, career yards per route run, 2.59, which is very, very good. And I'll say it from the get-go, 2.50 or higher is what you want to see in receivers coming into the NFL. So that's the receiving yards he had for every route ran. So that's 2.59 over his career. And then first downs per route run career is 12.4%, right? That's the rate he was collecting first downs or creating first downs with every route he ran. Those are very, very, very strong numbers. Very promising stuff. I will say that he, again, with his athleticism, it might work against him because RAS scores, I think, are the strongest predictive measure of what determines draft capital. You can have 4 years of college tape. You can, impress at the Senior Bowl, which, we'll talk about that in a second. But I think he's going to need to impress at the Senior Bowl because I don't think a 40 time is going to help him this year. I don't believe in the 40 time as much as other coaches do or evaluators do. I think it's what propels guys into higher draft capital than they necessarily don't deserve. So that's my issue with the 40 time, but it is a sexy measuring stat, especially when it comes to the combine. What I'm going to need to see from Surratt at the Senior Bowl is that he's just going to need to dominate and win reps because he's going to need to show how he's creative and getting open when he does lack that top end speed. At Indiana, he and Mendoza were really just, the chemistry was really, really well. Oh, yeah. But if you watch those passes come out to Surratt, they were coming out early almost every single time. They were coming out so early before the stem of the snap, before the stem of the break on Surratt's routes. So yeah, I am interested in seeing Surratt. Does have the really good production metrics. But yeah, a split end that will probably be kind of like a chain moving guy. Maybe a deep threat to, on those alert routes when whoever his quarterback is when they see good coverage. So yeah, that's my guy.
Yeah, no, and I like Surratt a good bit too. And you mentioned that last mock. The last 2 mocks, I've had him going early second. I think honestly, like third round's probably the sweet spot for him. Just because, again, I think athletic limitations. And you saw some of it in the national championship against Miami. Those free access releases. I mean, him and Mendoza they're on the same, brain wavelength. And they're reading each other's minds, and free access, easy money all day for Surratt. But then once they started to run a little bit more man coverage, specifically press, you could see where, all right, this guy's not the most shifty. He's not the most explosive off the line of scrimmage or in and out of his breaks. But he's also really a strong player on back shoulder catches. I saw somebody comp him to James Jones, and that was one where I was like, yeah, that's the one to me. Specifically like hoodie James Jones in Green Bay catching back shoulder from Rodgers. I don't know why, but that one really sticks when I watch Surratt. So I don't think you're going to, like you were saying, not in a sexy 40 or anything. But what I'm looking for at the Senior Bowl is when you get those one-on-one reps against press, do you still have enough get off, enough juice? Or once you're running the one-on-ones and you run that in-breaking dagger, are you going to be able to create some separation there? And 2 guys that had more juice, and really I liked Jaden Higgins a ton going into the event. I just needed to see it to fully buy into it. That was a guy that, to me, I saw more burst out of his breaks and a little bit more hip fluidity than I would have thought just from watching a 6'3" receiver on film. And then Pat Bryant was another guy who I kind of saw as a 4th round pick, but then kind of moved into like I'd take him mid to late 3rd kind of territory, ultimately kind of where he went, because I watched him and his fluidity just running routes. I was like, that guy carries 215 really, really well. Moves way smoother than he looks on his Illinois tape. So those are just the little things for Surratt. Is he going to look like your kind of James Jones possession? Okay, he's going to play on the line of scrimmage. He's our sacrificial X. He's our Romeo Dobbs of sorts. Or we're going to get to see a little bit more juice, and maybe that will change my look at him kind of like it did for Pat Bryant. We're like, hey, you know what? Let's bump him up half a grade or half a round, or maybe even a full round. And maybe he just becomes a true 2nd round type of guy in my mind. So right now, I think like 3rd round, like a couple of the teams that you mentioned right there, like the Saints definitely make a lot of sense to me. You get him on the line of scrimmage, you free up Olave. The Jets are another same thing. Get Garrett Wilson away from the X role. Like he's too slender built. Let's get him a Z or a slot role. So I think both of those places would be like ideal landing spots. The Dolphins, same thing. Waddle, he's better as a Z. Get him off the X roll. So a couple different teams right there. I could see where he goes 2nd round. I think right now, sweet spot, probably that 3rd round, but really smart football player. And really, I think Cooper goes before him. But I mean, between the 2 of those and then Charlie Becker next year, I mean, it's just a really, really good receiver room Indiana had this year. And part of why that offense was so surgical, machine-like, really, in a lot of ways. And then the only other thing I wanted to add here is a lot of RPOs in that Indiana offense. So yeah, a lot of hitches, RPO hitch, RPO slant, or the back shoulder throw to Mendoza. So it'll be interesting to see him outside of that context, running more NFL traditional, route trees and whatnot. So some of it's also interesting, the stuff that it's not just what you see on the field, it's just the stuff you overhear from the sidelines and whatnot. And you see them working with that coach or, whatever. Little things like that are going to be interesting to keep my eyes on who gravitates towards these Indiana guys and a guy like Surratt.
Yeah, it's interesting because I believe wasn't Signetti at James Madison with Surratt,
Yep. This is one
and
of
then
his JMU matchups.
Shanahan was with as well, right? Shanahan was his
Mike
wide
Shanahan.
receivers coach
Yep.
as well. So he had his coaching staff, and then he's got Mendoza, who's got great chemistry with. So I want to see what it looks like when he's taken out of his element, especially at the Senior Bowl, getting thrown to by the quarterbacks, but that he has no chemistry with. We'll see what all that looks like.
I think that's a great shout. And I said something similar on a different pod yesterday about Garrett Nussmeier, this quarterback who wins with anticipation. What happens when you go to an event where you have no chemistry with any of these guys? Yeah. And it's same is going to be true for, Mendoza's not throwing passes down in Moby. I've heard he's got an invite, but that he's going to respectfully decline, which he's going to go number 1 overall. Why would you go? So smart move.
Yeah.
But all that said, it's different catching passes from Diego Pavia than it is Fernando Mendoza. So I'm excited to see where that chemistry, how quickly can he build it, and how quickly does his game adapt?
Absolutely. Let's move on to your first pick.
Go, man.
All right,
let's do it. Yeah, dude, Ted Hurst was one that I did for our first Prospect to Pros kind of live breakdown in the Discord. And hand up, it's just because there's a couple of these small school guys that I haven't gotten around to. I felt like this year I did a better job watching guys throughout the course of the season. But by doing that, I'm typically following quarterbacks, headline, top 50 guys. Like my top 50 board, I'm pretty confident in because I've watched these guys week in and week out. But now we're at the point where it's like, okay, let's start finding some gems. And Ted Hurst was like, I know some people who have him as a second round grade. So I was like, all right, well, Valdosta State to Georgia State, like the level of competition's that's going to be a hard sell for me as a second rounder, but 6'3", 195, has the vertical speed, kind of a slender build. So perfectly honest, I'd like to see him get up to that 205 to 210, range a little bit more, just because with his size right now, he looks like Quentin Johnston, and kind of the same thing where I think Johnston actually got to like 208 at the combine, but kind of a slender build. And you kind of want him to be an X receiver because he's 6'3", but Quentin Johnston's skill set doesn't really match that. So that's not really the best example. Hurst, I think, could be an X, but he's also interesting after the catch. 17 forced missed tackles, if my memory serves. I'll pull it up real quick. But is that because he's playing Georgia State competition? Or is it because he is kind of this Quentin Johnston type where he's long, lanky, and kind of slippery? Yeah, he's 6'3". You think it's easy to get your hand on him, but for whatever reason, he just slips out of people's grasps. So that, and then just an expanded route tree. The quarterback play at Georgia State, no disrespect, was a privilege to watch, we'll say. So getting in with more refined quarterback play, and then we'll talk about Casey Concepcion a little bit later on. Like when he was at NC State, bad quarterback play. He's just like a slot gadget merchant because that's the easiest way to get him the ball. And like right now, his route tree, Ted Hurst, that is at Georgia State, is just like, what's the simplest way to give number 1 the ball? Because that's what our offense is. So I'm excited to see him be able to expand that route tree. But there's a sick athlete. There's a really nice yards after the catch ability. And I think because of the vertical speed, there might be a field stretcher there too. So a guy who could be a little bit of flavor of everything. It's just going to come down to second round, third round. After watching the couple of games that I watched with our Discord, I'm going to go back and watch some more and whatnot. I'd say probably I'm more comfortable in like the third round discussion, especially if you are looking for, like, if you're the 49ers and you're looking for a guy to help take the top off the defense. I'm curious to see where Hurst kind of fits into that. Maybe that's a guy they could target. But yeah, on-field speed, how does he match up against some of these, bigger school guys? It's one thing to look like a great athlete at that level when you're playing Georgia State comp, no disrespect again, but it's different when you got P4 and, high-end G5 guys all around you. So just want to see where his, play and refinement stands, his athleticism stands. It's just a good barometer. And there's a couple small school guys. We won't talk DBs, but like Chris Johnson from San Diego State. To me, I see a good enough NFL athlete at corner, but like we may get down there and it's like, okay, he looks okay for San Diego State comp, but it's not the same against these guys. Or Emmanuel McBeal-Warren. I'm not really as worried about that. He looks like he's got the goods for the NFL level, but Toledo safety, what, does he look like he fits in with the rest of the group? So there's a handful of these guys. We're small school. You got a lot of money on the line and a chance for you to prove. Two guys last year that had kind of come to mind with that. Gray Zabel from North Dakota State made himself a lot of money, proved that, hey, yeah, I'm from NDSU, but I can hang with anybody. And then Darius Alexander, he ultimately goes top the third round, but Toledo guy, does he have the goods to hang with, a loaded interior offensive line group last year? And he showed he did. So boosted up his stock probably half a round there. So I want to see if Ted Hurst has the same thing. And it's cool that he's just got an interesting build too. So like there's some shades of Quentin Johnston there, but I wonder if there's more traditional receiver skill set because he's got good ball tracking too. So long story short, he's kind of like this interesting enigma. So this is gonna be a good showcase for me to see where he really stacks up in this class.
I can see that Quentin Johnson comp with with the body size, and I will say real quick, I think the measurements that we have right now on the show, 6'3", 195, these are probably the measurements they got in when they transferred into their first school from their freshman from during their freshman years. So they probably have like 5-10 pounds on it right now. So maybe he's playing at 205. I don't know if he can get to 210.
Yeah.
And
it's also again, I'm not trying to besmirch Georgia State, but even if let's just say he is truly 195. Taking him out of this world of like you're a part-time student, part-time athlete, and then going from resources available to you at Georgia State, again, not trying to besmirch the program, but comparing that to like your full-time job is playing NFL receiver and you're playing for the Ravens, the 49, whatever, the resources available to those programs and those franchises, there's drastically different. So sometimes it's just like, you work with what you got around you. And I think at the next level, we'll have more around him.
the level of competition really matters. I mean, it's like
totally.
you can blow up at the smaller schools. I mean, like look at Nick Nash last year. That guy like led the league in receiving yards, and got drafted as a UDFA. I think he's still in the Falcons practice squad. I don't know where he ended up. But yeah, I mean, the level of competition really, really does matter. And you have to take that into account when you're selecting the games you want to watch for these guys. You want to find the toughest competition. Oh, they went off against in this game. Or was that against legit competition? Even look at the cornerback they're playing against. They're lining up against on a certain rep they won. I mean, these things all have to be taken into account. Yeah, and Ted Hurst, actually, I have been seeing him when you nominated him for the show. I saw about like that whole week prior to that, I saw him popping up as, he's a deep threat guy, a big, tall receiver, gets downfield. So yeah, and Brett Coleman put up a video of Ted Hurst, and all it said was Ted Hurst. It's like very dramatic. So I was like, all right, there's a name. There's a sleeper.
And I will say he, unlike some of the other small school guys, actually has a couple of games like the ones we looked at were the Ole Miss game, the Memphis game, and the JMU game. That's what we did in our Discord. So he's actually, it's Georgia State, but there's a couple of opponents on his tape that actually like some of the like Cole Payton from North Dakota State. I was watching some of his quarterback tape, and there's not like an opponent on there that you're like, there you go. There's the P4 guy or P4 opponent that I wanted to see, but at least he's got some of those. So he's got a little bit more of a track record proving ground, so to speak. So no, I'm with you 100%. I will say, I also like guys with a ton of volume. Like Tank Dell was a draft darling of mine coming out of Houston because he had over 100 catches like 2 years in a row. And Ted Hurst was targeted 125 times, 71 catches. Again, quarterback play at Georgia State was not very good, but 125 targets. That tells you they thought he was their best player. So I'm curious to see where he stands in the Senior Bowl.
Volume is king, and the more targets, the more film we have to work with. And also, Tank Dell, another Senior Bowl invitee. So I mean, and all these guys that are going to the Senior Bowl, they're going to the Senior Bowl for a reason. They're not locked in first round guys, and they're going there to raise their draft stock. Some guys are going to end up UDFA, some guys are going to raise their draft stock significantly, and that pretty much lines up with what It lines up well into our next guy, Seth McGowan. This is a running back out of Kentucky who has a tumultuous past, and I think this Senior Bowl invite or this offseason basically is going to be really, really pivotal and really significant for him in creating any kind of draft stock he possibly can. So he was drafted out of Oklahoma to Oklahoma, really coveted 4-star prospect, had a promising career at Oklahoma, ran for over 500 yards as a freshman. Got into some trouble in 2021. He got into some legal trouble with felony charges of robbery, conspiracy, assault, and battery with a dangerous weapon. He spent 3 months in jail, missed a couple years of football. In 2023 or 2024, he went to New Mexico State, put up over 1,000 scrimmage yards and 9 touchdowns, and then he transferred to Kentucky in 2025. He had another good year, ranking 4th in touchdowns in the SEC and 21st nationally in touchdowns. So, I mean, this guy, he's 5'11", 211 pounds, has a BMI of 29.4, which is, really, that's the build, the archetype of a early down running back. And again, these are probably measurables from when he was a freshman. Again, so the thing with him is, how is he going to make an impression on all these evaluators, coaches, assistant coaches at the Senior Bowl? If I were him right now, I'd be saying, I'd be practicing responding to questions that I'm going to get about legal issues. Have I shown maturity? Have I shown a track record of maturity since coming back to the NFL or coming back to college football? Because on film, he's a very scheme versatile runner. He has agility, has burst, acceleration, all those hot button words that we like to use to make prospects seem sexy. He is a very, very underrated wide receiver as far as yards per route run, which I think is an important metric for for running backs just as much so as it is for wide receivers. In terms of yards per route run, he had a higher yards per route run in college than Nick Singleton, who is infamous for being an accomplished receiving option at Penn State, as well as being a great running back, on the ground as well. But it's all about what this guy does at the Senior Bowl. And especially I don't think he's got an invite to the combine yet. Hopefully he does, but he's going to also have to prove that he's a highly athletic freak, which I think he is. And that's going to earn him some valuable draft stock. So we'll see what happens with that. I think, in my opinion, character issues usually tend to carry over with people. It's really hard for those character issues to absolve or, kind of dilute. But it looks like that he's learned a lot. I've seen some interviews of, what he's been saying since he's come back. And, it seems like he's become very, very humbled. So, I hope it works out for the guy. I really do like him as far as like his age. I should bring this up. He's 25 years old. So he's going to be like kind of what Ray Davis was coming out of college, right? Ray Davis was, I believe, 26 entering the NFL, and he got day 3 draft capital. So he's going to be kind of that guy once the fantasy community gets their feet wet, more so with the prospects. I think McGowan's going to be a favorite of a lot of people when they see his film. But yeah, he's going to be probably in your rookie drafts this year, maybe back end round 2, but round 3 guy that you're going to draft if he does earn draft capital. But yeah, big fan of his game.
Yeah, well, this is a running back class where like everyone's kind of searching for RB2, and to me, it's just been kind of Jonah Coleman. I'm totally here as a Notre Dame fan. I'm totally here for the Jadarian Price love, but it's not last year's class. We're gonna have Love go in the first round, and then like the question is like, when's that next guy coming off the board? In my last mock, it was like late second round. So we're a very different group than it was last year. So like day 3 is the landing spot for a lot of these running backs, and specifically McGowan, because I'm with you. Like the long speed, I'm curious. Like I don't know if you're drafting him over like an Emmett Johnson, Damone Claiborne for like a burner, but like it's just flavors of what you're looking for once you get to day 3. But I do like his eyes, like specifically his feet and his eyes and the ability to one cut, be a decisive decision maker. And then the pass catching volume, like that's where, like, and honestly, that's kind of where I like the Ray Davis comp and why it was easy to get Ray Davis on the field, even when you have James Cook on your roster. It's like, oh, Ray Davis is a really good pass catcher. Like, just keep it easy. And I think that's a nice, easy pathway to the field for McGowan early on in his career. I haven't watched all his pass protection reps, so that's like the one thing I'm going to have to go back and double check. But just watching him as a receiver, catch even just a couple passes in the flats, it all looks natural and smooth. And then to your point about age, yes, he's older, but he has about the same number of total carries in his career as Jeremiah Love. So, like, to me, it's like tread on the tires. Like, where are you at with that? Because sometimes, like, I'm starting to think of, was it Josh Jacobs? He was like a backup at Bama for like 2 to 3 years. And then his senior year, they just give him the ball 1,000 times. But, like, still, he came out, and it might not be Jacobs. It might be some other Bama back that I'm thinking of. But where they had that log line of just, like, first-round picks all in a row, and then they get to a senior year. I think it was Josh Jacobs. But he gets, like, 1 year of work, and then he comes to the league, and like doesn't have that much tread taken off the tires, and he's a great running back. So yeah. I wonder if that could be the case here for McGowan. But I think this is like if you're a team that's looking for a third down complement, and I'm trying to think about who that team would be off the top of my head. I don't know. Maybe it's like the Arizona Cardinals. I don't know. Like I don't know. Like they got Trey Benson there who's a solid pass catcher. So I'm trying to spitball. Or maybe it's Seattle, right? Like if they move on from Charbonnet and they just wanted someone to complement K-Walk as a pass catcher, McGowan could fit that role too. So it's a flavor here, but this is also a good example, and I'm glad you put him on here because the other added value to the Senior Bowl. I think of 2 guys last year, Mike Green and Maxwell Hairston. And this is an opportunity for McGowan and those guys last year to get out in front of some of the character concerns that are going to come up. For Mike Green, it was a sexual assault thing that then he got a scholarship at Virginia that it was a one-strike policy. If there's an accusation, whether it's charges or not, you're off the team. And that's what happened. So I think part of the reason he went was to solidify first-round status, but also like, here's the context of the situation. That's why I'm not at Virginia. That's why I had to go to Marshall. And then Maxwell Hairston had a few like on-campus sexual assault accusations, nothing that officially came to charges and like him getting booked or anything, but it was something that I was aware of. So I know teams were aware of. So it's a chance for him to be able to just talk about what I've learned that, maybe that wasn't really, it was just an accusation. That's not what happened, him to tell his side of the story, but also give some context. So I feel like this is a good opportunity for McGowan to be like, hey, I was, 19, 20 years old, made a terrible decision, but right. Look at how far I've come. And, as people, I think we all like second chances and we like to see people grow and learn and change. So I do think this is an opportunity where it only takes one team. Well, it only takes one team to hear him talk about his growth and his maturity and be like, I like that. That's my 5th round running back dart throw this year. It's going to be Seth McGowan, and he's going to be a receiving back, So, or, another team that came to mind. What about the New Orleans Saints?
I was thinking the Saints.
If they don't go running back at 8, like there's kind of part of me that thinks that Kellen Moore kind of wants Jeremiah Love just because like of the running backs he's worked with in the past. But if they didn't and just ran in with, Devin Neal, Keandre Miller, and then Seth McGowan, I think that trio kind of complements each other. Miller's got some explosive long speed. Neal's a super efficient runner, but he's not like flashy from an athletic standpoint. And McGowan is the pass catcher. I kind of love the idea of that trio of a committee.
The Senior Bowl isn't a really place for running backs to shine, right? It's more of a kind of
it's one of these things where
pass blocking, pass rush, one-on-one reps for the wide receivers and the tight ends, pass catching ability. So for Seth, it's all going to be about
the character.
Be personable to the coaches when you're in during interviews. Hey, you're from that town? You know that guy over there? My kid went to that school, or I know him over there. That's my favorite baker. Be personal with the coaches. Rub somebody the right way. Right? Just do that. Just do enough of that and be personable to these guys and show them that you are a human being who made a terrible mistake when he was a kid, maturity issues. That's all in the past now. And so that's all it really is about.
Yeah, totally. And I will say for the running back drills, there is a chance there for pass protection. Typically that's where the running backs get beat up on because linebackers are just going to give them everything they possibly can. And that typically comes after the running back receiver drills. And dude, like, linebackers are just left on an island in an assignment that they'll almost never have the next level, but it's just an opportunity for a running back to roast a linebacker in coverage. And they normally do, but then the linebackers get to retaliate with, blitzing reps and taking on running backs. So there is a little, because again, I haven't watched his pass protection reps. I am curious to see where he stands in that. And a 5'11", 211, it's a pretty solid build for someone who should be able to stand in there and do his own. So I am curious about that aspect.
It really is a good expose for pass protection. I mean, you're left on an island.
Or at least
absolutely
willingness.
You're naked. Right? There's no chip. Yeah, show willingness or something like that. I mean, Chase Brown got really exposed for his pass protection issues at the Senior Bowl when he was there. And then, that carried on to his rookie year where he didn't get many touches and everybody was kind of pounding the table for him to get touches. I'm like, the dude cannot block anybody, and took until a year or two for him to get the job. So, yeah, it's going to be – that's probably the most important place, and I'm going to probably be there for many of those pass blocking reps.
And another example I'll point to, I was talking to a Chargers reporter last year, and part of the reason – so many of my mocks had Amarian Hampton to the Chargers, and luckily enough got that right in the final mock, was because I loved Kamani Vidal coming out of Troy. And so did he, the guy I was talking to. But he just couldn't pass protect. So, like, as much as they wanted to play him, he made it a non-starter. The barrier for entry, he couldn't surpass it. So then they draft one of the best pass protecting running backs in last year's class, and a guy that you could definitely play on 3 downs if you want to, in Amarian Hampton. So it is just interesting to see. It's this little facet that it's easy to get lost in the mix, but it plays a huge role.
It's people don't pay attention to it, and I'll end it. I'll let you get to your guy, your next guy here. But I will say, like, Woody Marks, he coming out of USC, he had one of the best pass protection preseasons I've ever seen. He was great on special teams. He was great in pass protection, and I think that quickly allowed him to elevate up the depth chart and pretty much take the job from Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is pretty much dust by now. Love him. All the respect to him. But yeah. So, anyways, we'll get on to your next player.
Go ahead. Let's talk Jacoby Lane, man. I mean, he's look. I've already decided, like, Mekhi Lemon. He's not the number 1 player on my board, but I think he's like my favorite player to watch. Just like if I am having a bad day and I need someone to brighten my mood, it's probably Mekhi Lemon highlights from that point on. But Jacoby Lane is a really interesting prospect. I don't think vertical speed is going to be anything that we're like pounding the table for here as like a calling card or big strength or anything. We're probably talking mid 4.5s. If he runs, he might go the Teterow McMillan route and just be like, nah, I'm good. And I also do think there's sometimes where you see some nice fluidity in and out of his breaks. And then there's some other times where he looks a little stiff in the hips, specifically on in and out breaking stuff. That to me is where it's like he has a little bit of a hard time of opening up or closing down the hips and or really just flipping the hips open and making the cut. But his acceleration and decel looks a little bit more natural. So it's just one of these things where, like, sometimes it looks a little weird on the tape. So I'm just like looking for the in-person to confirm it. But this guy can make some sick contested grabs. And like Drake London was a part-time basketball player that also played football at USC and then obviously continued with the football route. But like Jacoby Lane has some of that in him where it's just like you put the ball in his vicinity and you feel really damn good about him coming down with it. And then he's a really interesting screen player. Like he has more forced missed tackles than you would think for someone who is 6'4", 195. And specifically in the red zone, they will scheme it up nonstop for him inside the red zone. So I think that's interesting that like That's what Lincoln Riley's thinking. Hey, I need to score a touchdown here. Let's scheme it up. Yeah, 11 forced missed tackles. That's not like a gaudy amount just in and of itself, but like Antonio Williams had 14, and he's 5 inches smaller and not 50 pounds less, but 15 to 20 pounds less. So, and a slot receiver versus an X. So it's just interesting. So I think a little bit slippier after the catch than you would think. And then, so it's like, it's weird. Like, this is not necessarily my comp, but like T. Higgins had some of that at Clemson, where it's like, I remember watching him trying to run a dagger route, and I was like, that looked like it hurt you. It like hurt your midsection to do that. But then you'd watch him after the catch, and you're like, that looks like a natural fluid athlete. And again, like Jacoby Lane looks like a guy who played a ton of pickup basketball. Like he almost just looks like, so I don't know what it is. And I don't know if it's the coaches, the receiver coaches, how they're, I don't know. I really don't. So I'm excited to see it in person, because like this could be another one of these Pat Bryant situations where it's like, no, okay, like this, he's way more fluid than the herky jerky stuff that I notice on tape. And maybe, you know, sometimes you just watch stuff one day and you feel like it's herky jerky, and then you'll turn it on the next day and you'll be like, never mind, I don't know what I was looking at. So some of it might have just been the day or two that I was looking at. So, but he was another guy we talked about in the prospect Discord channel. And I do really like the contested catch ability. The X potential's there. Another probably third round guy in the last couple of mocks. He's been going second. Sometimes it's just tough to like wait until you get to the third for some of these guys. And sometimes the need is just so privy at the receiver spot when you're playing 3 guys more often than not at a given time. So he's a really interesting player, but really just his athleticism. That's what I want to see. Like his man coverage reps, are you able to separate? I know you can make the 50-50 grabs even with someone Velcroed to your hip. Can you make life a little easier? Can you, because it's also like, let's be honest, he's playing against the Big Ten. Had some pretty good corners this year, but like it's Big Ten corners versus NFL corners. It's going to get a whole lot harder at the next level too. So I'm just curious from that standpoint too. But at moments he looks like a really fluid athlete. Not again like straight line burner, but like fluid, carries 6'4" really well. Highly fun, kind of like Ted McMillan to stay on the West Coast, where like he didn't run a 40. But like he separated, and you're like, how?
Yeah.
Because he's just so fluid, and the head and shoulder fakes play an aspect of that. And even when you don't get separation, he's just a behemoth and he'll make a grab. So I'm just curious to see where like Lane stands as a separator at the Senior Bowl. But really interesting. And he's a guy I didn't think would declare. So that's another reason why, right? We're talking about I think a true junior, maybe a redshirt sophomore. By the way, a third-year guy that I thought would just go back to USC and be the dude, go get 1,500 yards and then maybe be, a first-round candidate next year. But he decided to go out and come out this year.
Pretty confident.
Yeah, so he's confident. And that also makes me wonder, what were you hearing from teams, right? Like you go to the, what's that committee called? The pick commensurate committee, something like that, where they give you a draft grade of like day 1, day 2, or like back to school. So he must have been getting some pretty solid grades. So that is all very interesting to me as well. So I'm curious around the buzz around Jacoby Lane.
It seems like this year, or maybe it's just like that because Senior Bowl invites are more so like that. It seems like this year there are some behemoths at receiver as far as like height goes.
Oh, yeah.
We were discuss Hurst, and then Jacoby Lane, and then next guy I'm going to discuss after Jacoby Lane. And I'm wondering, I'm assuming they're all going to be good contested catch guys. I think, how versatile can you be probably is going to be a separating factor. Like,
Sure.
Okay, there's a big guy. As a coach, like, how do I know which big guy I want? What do you see Jacoby Lane as being a versatile kind of player that can move around the field, or is he just kind of like your traditional?
Well, I almost wonder if power slot's the way to go with him. And that's again, the separation, that's going to be key here. Because I do think you see enough after the catch where you're like, he's a pretty fluid mover. So I want to see that translate from a route running standpoint, but minimum, could he be like old man Vincent Jackson for someone, or like kind of later career Keenan Allen even, where like he's just going to play in the slot and he's a willing blocker. I don't think he's the world's greatest at it. And at 195, maybe you like to see him bulk up a little bit more there. But I do wonder if power slot is ultimately the way to go. Like, could he be Jalen Coker? While we're talking about Ted McMillan, I think Jalen Coker is a totally live possibility for a team that's looking for that power slot. And again, USC uses him a ton in the red zone. So like that, again, might be the easiest way to go.
Okay. Awesome. We're going to take a quick ad break.
Quick about like tall receivers. That is interesting. Yeah. Cause I'm looking back at last year's class, and there's like Besh was 6'2", Ayumanor 6'2", Higgins 6'4", Ted McMillan was 6'5". So it feels like we get these waves, and I guess it wasn't last year, but I feel like there was a recent class where like everyone was slot receiver. Maybe it was the 24 class. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick. Where I felt like everyone's just, it's just the slot receiver class. Not really that one. Marvin Odunze were both pretty big. I thought this year is the year to go get your ex receiver, man. I mean, freaking Tate, Denzel Boston, Arnold, 2 guys we've talked about. Jeremy Bernard's got good sides. Chris Brazzell from Tennessee. I mean, it's the year to go get your guy to be your sacrificial X.
Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to see what happens to those guys. Whether the guys fall. But we're gonna discuss another one of those guys after the ad break. We're gonna take one real quick, and then we'll discuss another behemoth receiver.
Hey, pop quiz, hot shot. Who is Jeremiah Love? Who's Fernando Mendoza? Who's Makai Lemon? Well, they just happen to be the first 3 picks off the board in the 2026 Origins tournament, which is currently live on Fast Draft. That is right. 2026 Best Ball has already begun on Fast Draft. Use code FAST to get a $50 deposit match. Code is FAST for a $50 deposit match. Best Ball 2026 is now. Start drafting faster.
All right, guys, let's move on to our next guy. This guy is a Notre Dame receiver.
Let's do it.
Pretty massive human being, 6'4", 220 pounds, but has the movement skills of a smaller kind of more agile guy. This is Malachi Fields. We see his Virginia uniform on there, but he did transfer to Notre Dame. Had a pretty solid year. I think he had his best years of his entire collegiate career. Large frame receiver, excellent jump ball skills, and a nice beginner package of releases off the line of scrimmage. He knows how to attack the leverage. He adjusts well to passes thrown behind him while he's in stride. He can really sink his hips at the stem, which is very impressive given his size. Really difficult for defenders to bring him down, I think. Very efficient on curls and comebacks, specifically on those routes. He can tell a story while running routes. For example, I was watching him play versus Notre Dame in 2024 before transferring to Notre Dame. It was a single rep versus press outside shade. He had a split release. He worked inside. So he was on the right side of the field. Split release, works inside, stacks the DB. The route is designed to be a deep out, but he raises his shoulder and acts if he's digging towards the inside. And Malachi Fields doesn't raise his shoulders when he's about to stem, but he does it on this, tells a story like he's going to do it. The DB panics and tries to grab him, but Fields literally drags the DB until the DB falls and he gets open, but he wasn't able to make the catch because the pass was thrown too far out in front of him. And I think the ref called DPI on that play.
It's almost like when someone's dragging you can't fully get to a spot.
You can't. He's too big. And I think, what I want to see out of him at the Senior Bowl was that he was so large off the line of scrimmage that he didn't really need to kind of move DBs with his feet because he can just kind of move through them or kind of move them aside. But there are some instances where if you slow the tape down, it really does look like he's working with some nuance. He has like a nice one-hand swipe he works with, working to the outside. Wasn't a crazy productive guy. Career yards per route run was 1.94, which is kind of like back end day 2 kind of wide receiver. He has to go crazy at the Senior Bowl, at the Combine. He should test well. I think he's going to test pretty well. He's going to be impressive with speed and burst scores. I think he ultimately becomes a depth piece in year 1 for a team. We'll see. I think we'll see highlight grabs from him at the Senior Bowl, but I definitely do want to see better use of his hands versus jam and more a more in-depth package of releases from him. But I mean, it's really hard not to like a guy like this. And as we said, here's another guy, except he's 6'4", 220 pounds, gonna play split end. He's almost as big as some tight ends, but except he's 220 pounds. Tight ends are a little heavier, about 20 pounds heavier. But yeah, you can put him in the slot, get crazy with him if you want. But yeah, I think he definitely earns draft capital because he is a guy that coaches are going to see. Like, look, I see that this guy can move. He's got mobility. He's got agility for a guy his size. It's very interesting. He has some nuance to his game. He has, some craftiness to his game. He's made some incredible catches. I posted it. I don't know if I posted that catch. Yeah, in our Discord, 32 beat writers, a beautiful sideline catch. He goes up. The thing is like pretty much he's like bending backwards for the catch. So I mean, that's crucial. He does that all the time. That's a consistent aspect of his game. Another huge wide receiver. I'm really interested to see at the Senior Bowl. I think he's gonna make a lot of DBs look silly. I feel sorry for whoever's to match up against him at the Senior Bowl during those one-on-one live reps. So yeah.
Well, dude, especially in the red zone, because like you said, his body control is top notch, man. So I think once you get into the red zone and he's just catching high point passes, you're going to need some special DBs to be able to go tat for tat with him, man. Like, that's going to be a tough challenge. But yeah, I'm interested to see once we get to Indy, speed and that 10-yard split, 20-yard shuttle. Like, I am curious to see, because it is one of these things where, like, I think at times he's just too reluctant to use his physicality. But I do think there is more separation potential. And again, I don't know, part of that might just be Notre Dame, right? Like Mike Denbrock, I'm trying to think of Bo Collins, that was his name. The receiver that, I think he was on the Giants, this year. But like kind of he was the leading guy for Notre Dame, but in like a weird passing attack with Riley Leonard under center, and basically like the only passes they threw were like curl routes. So like I don't know if that's just like what Denbrock's asking these guys to do. Like we're focused on just getting the sticks, making tough grabs, move the chains. We're running offense, but I don't know. But there is times after the catch, he's also a solid blocker too. So like you mentioned in the slot, this is another power slot guy, and I think his blocking makes it even easier to do that. But yeah, I do wonder what his athleticism looks like and just separation ability. And I do think there is some more nuanced with how he can beat press. Right now, he's just looking to get up the field as fast as he possibly can. So I do want to see a little bit more nuance there, and he'll get the chance to showcase some of that. But yeah, I think, dude, like this is a 4th round receiver that like once he's there, if you're looking for a big body guy to just take again, sacrificial X, just take some blows off Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave, whoever your guy is, or just one other guy to do some work in the red zone. Like I think he's an interesting piece in the mix. But also like depending on how he tests, and depending on where you think versatility-wise, he could just be like a really solid 4th receiver for really just about any team, because he could do a little bit of X. Maybe he is a little bit of a power slot, and you can kind of cross-train him at both spots. And then God forbid if there's an injury on your squad, this guy can kind of fill in 2 birds, 1 stone there. So yeah, you're talking about a 4th round guy, so we're talking about depth piece. So I almost think that like that maybe should be his angle. Like think about all the different ways you can use me and how easy it is to get me on the field, and I can just be your backup receiver, whatever the case may be. So, yeah. And also I'm a sucker for guys who go from one school to the next. And to me, UV had a good year this year, but Notre Dame is definitely a perceived step up. And like his play took a step up with it. So I'm a sucker for guys like that too. So I think that's a good selling card for Malachi Fields too. But I am biased as a Notre Dame fan.
All right. Okay, so that explains a lot. I didn't know that. I didn't know you're a Notre Dame fan.
So yeah, man, of course. Malachi Fields, wide receiver 1. No.
Yeah. It is a weird offense. It's really hard to evaluate wide receivers in that Notre Dame offense, but yeah.
And I mean, Denbrock, even this year with like a real quarterback who could get drafted next year or potentially be a 1st rounder in 28 if he decides to stay that long, like it's still just hitches, goes, and comebacks. Like that's really all Denbrock asks of receivers. Now, granted, if you're Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., like who the hell cares? Like that's all you needed to do in college. But I do wonder because like Fields is, I think, a good athlete, but not Neighbors or BTJ levels of insane athletes. So the limitations of the route tree on a guys like BTJ and Neighbors, they can kind of persevere through that. Fields, I do wonder like the next level, if he got in with like, I'm trying to think of like a high-end receiver coach. No one's coming to immediately mind, but like someone like that who can just kind of expand his game. I do wonder what type of ceiling he does. He does have that. We just think it's Notre Dame.
That's the challenge with evaluating these wide receivers.
100%.
Some in these, these Ole Miss offenses, Kiffin offenses, or they go to Tennessee. You're like, how the hell? You have to take psilocybin's mushrooms to kind of expand your mind to understand how these guys can be utilized in NFL offense. You have to be imaginative and take that risk. But yeah, also let's just move on. Let's move on to a smaller guy. One of your guys, Casey Concepcion. Sorry, but yeah. I'll let you take off. Go ahead and lead off with him.
Yeah, man. Well, actually, that leads us to our presenting sponsor, Mushrooms. No, I'm playing. That would be hilarious. But dude, I actually caught somebody. I was on a podcast yesterday, and I caught them off guard with this. But Casey Concepcion, as of my last big board update, is the 14th player on my board. Like I am all in. Now, I will say I'm not going to go as far as Garrett from Football Analysis. He's a great follow if you're not already following him on Twitter and on YouTube. Football Analysis is his football channel. But he has the comp of Percy Harvin. I'm not going to go that far because I remember specifically when I was like, God, let's see, Percy. I must have been like 7 or 8 years old. Like I was like the perfect age to be like, holy shit, this guy's unbelievable. So I'm not going to go that far. But yeah, dude, I am the 14th player on my board right now, and like the Jets at 16 make a lot of sense if they're willing to like, hey, we'll get a big guy later. We'll tag team KC with Malachi Fields in the 4th round. Like, oh my God, that would be crazy. Or like the Steelers at 21, the Rams would be a really interesting fit. There's a lot of teams in that like mid-teens to the early 20s that all could use some Casey Concepcion. So really dynamic and explosive player in and out of his breaks. And then, 5'11", 187. Here is the biggest misconception, forgive the pun, that people are going to have about him. They're going to look at him and say he's a slot-only player. Nope. This past year, he played 65% of his snaps outside and then 35% of his snaps, or give or take, in the slot. And he also had a 65% contested catch percentage, 10 for 15. So, like, do want to also throw that out there. He is not this guy who is just an itty-bitty slot receiver who only can do that. That's how NC State had to use him because Grayson McCall, God bless your soul, not an NFL quarterback. We'll leave it at that. So, NC State was trying to do any and everything possible, every gimmick you can think of to just get him the football. He's our best player. How do we make this possible? So it was great to see him this year. And dude, it was the Notre Dame game where he made this, it's third down, he runs this out route, and he makes this nice, the pass is high from Marcel Reed, so he has to go climb the ladder and makes a midair body adjustment and then hauls it in at the sticks, first down A&M. And that was like a play where I was like, oh my God, like they're letting him play receiver. Like he's not just going to be this gadget piece that NC State was using him as. So that was like the light bulb moment where I was like, okay, this guy, because he was my summer scouting receiver 5 or 6 or something like that. Like I was excited about it, but I didn't know what to expect. That was the game where I was like, yep, we got a live one here, folks. So yeah, and ever since then, he's just gone up and up and up and up on my board. So, he caught a screen pass against Missouri, just, simple receiver bubble screen, 50 plus yards to the house, so you're getting a traditional receiver, you're getting one of the best satellite players in the class, and then an abundance of speed to challenge over the top. So he's not going to be an X. Like he's kind of this year's Luther Burden for me. He's a Z or a slot. So like the limitation is he can't play X receiver. But that's about the only negative I've got on the scouting report. And then drops. He's got some drop issues. I think he had 9 drops this year. I'll double check that. So that's like the one thing I would like to see, cleaned up. But other than that, 7 drops this year, 7 drops last year. So like that's not super ideal. But dude, he's getting open, and to me that's more important. We can work some time on the jugs machine to clean up the hands. So I love him. This is like probably my most anticipated player to watch at the Senior Bowl, just because like this guy's such a freaky athlete. I can't wait to see it up close and personal.
He's gonna make a mess at the Senior Bowl. I think he's gonna make a mess at DBs. I mean,
he will probably have the single most clip out. Him and like Ruben Bain are gonna have the most like clip out moments, because like Bain's gonna bull rush a couple dudes to the chest and have oh my god moments, and then Concepcion, like someone's gonna have to make sure like high ankle socks, high ankle shoes, like people.
Yes.
You're gonna need the footwear protection when you're going one-on-one with this guy. He's gonna hurt you.
Exactly. I mean, NC State he played out of the stop 80 out of slot 80% each year, right? Yep. He was fine. I think he went up for over like 60 for both of those years. He totaled 1,600 yards, and I think like 15 touchdowns, 16 touchdowns. I can't remember. So uber productive out of the slot. But then he goes to A&M. It's a godsend that he goes to A&M. He plays out wide 65% of the time, like you said. Yards per route run, 2.45 yards per route run. Really strong numbers. 12.8% first down per route run rate. Just moving the offense down the field, right? 12.8%. Thank God he went to Texas A&M, put him out wide. It's going to be amazing. I mean, this guy, he's not even where he should be right now as far as hype goes. I mean, yeah.
Dude. Also second highest rate of press coverage faced. It's just not something you would expect for 5'11", but there's a little Tank Dell in that, where like Tank Dell had this stigma around him, but like and I remember specifically a Senior Bowl clip that Jim Nagy tweeted out where he had this like switch foot release, where it's like, look, I get it. He's sub 200 pounds. He looks like the guy you would want to press the line of scrimmage, but if you come up empty, you might as well just put 7 points on the board, because he's going to make you pay, and it's going to be a touchdown the other way. And KC kind of had some of those moments this year where it's like, press at your own, potential danger here. Like, if this goes south, it's a touchdown easy for A&M. Like even Marcel Reed's hitting that throw. So, I think he's a guy who brings a lot to the table. And like, I look at my receivers in this class, and it's like, I love the top 4. I really like Tyson and Tate are 1 and 2. And then it's like, honestly, Lemon might be like 2, but I don't know. I like them all. But like Lemon and Concepcion, like the only negatives they have is that they can't play X receiver. And like, if that's all I have to say about you in a league that is dominated by 3 receiver sets, we're gravy. You're going top half the first round for me.
It really doesn't matter, because I mean, Concepcion and the slot and the flanker these days, they just get as many targets as a split does. So this is
dude. Like if Miami pulled the trigger at 11, imagine. I mean, granted, Mike McDaniel's not there anymore, but like if they did something similar, or like, dude, God forbid, like if the Chargers pulled the trigger on it, like imagine him and Mike McDaniel like getting a head start and then snap. Like, good luck.
Absolutely,
simply good luck to anybody with that assignment.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, man. I'm really excited to see where he goes. Definitely a first round lock. I think you can consider that. Let's move on to our first tight end. How about that? Let's clean the palate. Let's clean the palate with a little tight end talk. Tanner Koziol. I hope I'm saying that right. I mean, this guy, he popped up on my radar. I wasn't planning to do any tight ends or running backs for that matter, but I wanted to get as much in as I could before the show started, because I wanted to see what the tight end class had, because those reps matter at the Senior Bowl as well. This guy's 6'7", 250 pounds. I'll just go out and say this. He was top 2 in receptions in the FBS in 2025 and 2024. In 2024, he was number 2. 2025, number 1 in receptions in total receptions among tight ends. He totaled 159 receptions over the past few years for 1,491 yards and 13 touchdowns. 6'7", 250 pounds does not do that. They just don't do that. tight ends to finish top 5 or better in receptions over the past 5 years: Brock Bowers, Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid, Michael Mayer, Trey McBride. So in 2025, Cozell finished first in receptions. Eli Stowers finished second. Michael Trigg finished fourth. I mean, that's all really elite company. This guy, I can't remember what schools he went to. I know he was at Houston his final year.
Ball State to Houston.
Ball State. Yeah, Ball State. He balled out of Ball State in 2024. He is a fluid. He's athletic considering his size. He's a fluid mover, has really good body awareness, body control, understands where the sticks are on the field. Immense red zone weapon. You can get him if you get him matched up in one-on-one coverage without a safety capping him on his side of the field. It might be just game over for whoever's defending him. He can play slot, inline, H-back. He can block on the interior as an H-back. He can perimeter block. He has very good hand placement. Always gets his hands inside. He has a pretty good anchor, and he can recover if he's knocked off balance. And that's something like you'd see, like, if you watch Zach Martin, the great Zach Martin of the Dallas Cowboys, that guy was really good at recovering when he got knocked off balance. Receiving, he adjusts to the ball well and catches away from his body, even when defenders are draped all over him. So he's not scared to put his hands out, come back to the ball, work towards the ball. Excellent go-to red zone weapon. Already mentioned that. So yeah, I mean, this guy, uber producer. He is ranked, I think, like 8th overall in a lot of, consensus ranking, 9th ranking. This is a pretty strong tight end class. There's a lot of fun prospects in this class. But Tanner, I mean, what are people supposed to do at the Senior Bowl against him? I mean, I don't even know what to look for this guy, because it's just going to be, it should just be pure domination out of Tanner. I am actually looking more towards his blocking reps, his one-on-one blocking reps. I want to see him do more. I want to see him be more consistent in his blocking, because I think that is going to be his probably main weakness. Just he's got a proven track record of being an accomplished receiver. I think a lot of people from different teams are going to have their eyes out for him and have him highlighted as one of the players when he's on the field to go watch out. I think the sideline will be a little bit more crowded when Tanner is on the field.
Yeah, and thinking about, not that this year's Senior Bowl is going to mirror everything that happened last year, but like there were 2 tight ends last year that stole the show. And I think there's 2 guys this year that could do similar things. And it was Mason Taylor and it was Elijah Arroyo. And they did it in kind of 2 different ways. Like Mason Taylor, like any 50-50 ball in his vicinity, he was mossing everybody. Like anytime you got a clip of Mason Taylor, he was making a catch over someone. Now, that doesn't mean someone was on his hip for the majority of the rep, but like specifically in the red zone stuff, like his ability to go elevate and then just go pluck it out of the air, long arms, vice grips for hands. That's where I think Tanner Koziel could be. He could be that guy this year, where it's just like, dude, anything in his vicinity, this guy is just coming down with it. So right now I kind of see him as more like a 4th round guy, just like a flavor of dude, but like this could be the week that moves him into like 3rd round territory. And like Zach Ertz is kind of the player that comes to mind, where enough of an inline block. And that's ultimately kind of where I wanted to go here. Like, I think the big reason Mason Taylor went 2nd round, there were a lot of times, specifically like towards the end of practice, where like coach and one of the coaching staffs that was there last year, I'm pretty sure it was the Jets. But anyways, they would be coaches come over and they would want to see Mason Taylor do a little bit more blocking stuff. And I think part of the reason he goes in the 2nd round is because the Jets felt confident playing him in line. And if Koziel could do some of the same stuff, he'll be a red zone monster, make all these contested grabs. But if he can also show like, hey, hand placement's rock solid, he's getting inside of the guy he's playing or working against, little things like that could make it easy for you to be like, I'm going to take this guy at 80 overall now because he's going to be my inline tight end. And that's going to open us, like if like the Ravens extended Mark Andrews, but like if they kept Likely instead and they wanted an inline guy to like that, this would be the guy to do something like that with. So I like the player, and like he's been productive as a receiver everywhere he's gone. So I just don't know if like the blocking reps were ever his highest priority / the offense's priority. So, but this is this type of showcase where it's like, let me see what you got. And if he shows just enough of a blocking standpoint, I think he moves himself into like 3rd round territory. And then real quick, we don't have like a graphic for him, but the other tight end I wanted to mention who could be like this year's Elijah Arroyo, I think it's Justin Jolie, the tight end from NC State. Like he was 215 pounds at UConn, and then ultimately, bulks up and gets to NC State. Now it's like a true 250-ish pounds and can play in line, but you're not drafting him for his blocking. But Arroyo last year showcased that he could play some X. Like there were legitimate reps where he just played like X receiver, and then Seattle asked him to do that from time to time this year. That I think will be Justin Jolie's like chance to showcase that, like, I'm the best receiving tight end here, him and Michael Trigg, but like Jolie's a better athlete and separator. Trigg is just like a monster at the catch point too. So I think Koziel and Jolie are gonna be the two guys that kind of steal the show in a similar way that like Mason and Royo did last year.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'm very excited to see all these prospects, and especially this last guy you mentioned here, Brandon Thompson. Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of hype on him. I want you to break him down for us.
Yeah, man. And I've only watched a handful of games, but it's just because like once Dane Brugler says, "Hey, this is my pick for like this is gonna be the fastest guy in the draft," I'm like, okay, cool. Let's fire up the tape. And I remember I'd watched Thompson, and he was a guy I had known of and watched broadcast film of and whatnot when watching Mississippi State throughout the course of the season. And yeah, he was fast and like always kind of caught my eye. But I was like, oh, okay, fastest guy in the class. Like let's take a deep look at this. But dude, he's got some nice ball tracking ability, and that's like the biggest thing. 5'9", 170. Like this is a slot and field stretching type of guy, and like yards after the catch. Like he's got a very isolated role. This is a day 3 receiver, no doubt about it. Just because of how like singular his role is going to be. But dude, at that one role, he's pretty awesome. So he's got the yards after the catch ability, a true jitterbug with the ball in his hands. 170 pounds, like the one thing you're there, like you don't want him taking too many hits. But nonetheless, he's a pretty creative player after the catch. And then the long speed and just the stress that's going to put on the defense. Like we're talking, this is easily a 4-2 guy to me. It's just going to come down to like how low can you go with the 4-2. If I had to guess right now, I'd say like 4-2-4, 4-2-5, somewhere in that range. So pretty awesome stuff there from Brandon Thompson. At 5'9", though, like it does make it a little tough because like where are you lining him up? But I did want to shout him out because he's someone that I finally got around to checking out. A lot of buzz for him, but I think he's gonna be one of the fastest guys in this class. And again, day 3, probably 4th, 5th round. We're talking about a specific role in an offense, but if your offense needs that speed element, I think not only the long speed but the ball tracking Brandon Thompson has. I might have to look this up. I love receivers with a background in baseball, and I almost wonder if Brandon Thompson played a little baseball growing up or something like that. Because you see some receivers, and it looks like they're doing everything in their power to get their body back to the ball. And then there's guys that you like forget that you're watching them catch the pass because it's so natural. And I will say Thompson also pretty decent with the late hands, especially for smaller guys. I feel like the late hands is something that like big body guys are really good at, like Surratt that we talked about earlier on. He's like really good at the late hands. Thompson's pretty good at it for someone who's smaller as well. So he does all these little things plus the ball tracking and the long speed that make him a really interesting deep threat. So if you're a team that's looking for that field stretching weapon, Brandon Thompson, I think this is your guy.
I can't find any stats on him. I'm looking online right now. I can't find his name's not coming up for some reason, but I'm gonna see what he produced as far as like a receiver.
Oh yeah, here I got
5'9", 170. I mean, I feel like this guy I'm assuming he played out of the slot a lot, right?
Yeah, here I can get you the exact percentage for that too. But
yeah,
he was someone that just watched a lot of Saturdays, kind of popped for me there. And I should also note it's EN, not AN. So we'll blame Matt Olson for the graphic on that one. But yeah, no, you're talking about a guy who he actually played 86% of his snaps out wide. So, but some of that's also just like the Mississippi State offense, not on the line of scrimmage. So it's also like when you see wide percentage, and the same thing is true about Casey Concepcion. Like you see that in PFF and it's like, that's good to know, but it doesn't mean it's X receiver. Like not all outside reps are built the same. So, and especially at 170, right. I can't see a world where you'd want to see this guy playing a whole lot of on the line of scrimmage and face and press, but yeah, it is shades of the Tank Dell conversation where like, especially this guy with how fast he is, you swing and miss here, you're giving up 7 points one way or another.
All right.
Another. So, but yeah, no, I want to see day 3 receiver for sure. And then just getting the chance to see him at the Senior Bowl, like they put these chips in the guy's pads and they have a running log of like top speeds at each position. I'd be shocked if Brandon Thompson's not like the fastest on-field guy. And then also like the miles tracked, I remember Xavier Restrepo one day at practice ran like 7 miles and he was the top receiver. Like Brandon Thompson, just the sheer amount of ground this guy covers, he'll probably be one of the top guys in that too.
I actually do love that stat, that little chip they put in, because it doesn't show just their acceleration, it shows their decel ability too.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Which is a huge measurement that we never ever get a look at until we go to the Senior Bowl. Or yeah.
And then like a guy like Shamar James, linebacker from Florida, like day 3 guy for sure. But like before that, I kind of saw him as an undrafted dude. But then like you saw the passion, the energy, and this guy was a maniac. Every tackle he made, he's letting the whole stadium know that he made that play. And then you saw he's the top speed on field at the Senior Bowl. And his like 40 time at the combine wasn't great, but that was just something I kept in the back of my mind with the pads on when it really matters. He was the fastest linebacker there. And then just like that maniac, Tasmanian devil playing with his hair on fire. I was like, this guy is born to be a special teams lunatic. Like this guy, and he was a pretty good special teams player his rookie year. So little things like that go a long way too. Just kind of adding some flavor to the prospect's profile.
Yeah, and I just checked his again. I keep bringing up yards per route run and first downs per route run because there are a lot of there are a lot of stats that I use. I mean, like when I'm building profiles on all these guys, I like columns and columns, but these are the two that stand out the most and have the most correlation. So first downs per route run, which was at 10.8. So that's really solid. Yards per route run was like at 2.3 something. Really, really good as well. So, I mean, it seems like a lot of these guys this year, and I guess this will be my closing thought for this. What I'm noticing is that a lot of these guys this year, especially the Senior Bowl guys, they were super productive in their final years, right? For whatever reason, not so much in their first 2-3 years, but once they got to their final year, that's where they really shined. Let you know who they were, and I think that's kind of what separates this class from last year's class and the year before that, especially when it comes to wide receivers, is that you saw consistent production, or more or less throughout the year, as the years went on. And these guys, you're seeing them all, pop off, on their final year, as they should. That's when they're assuming
ideally that's how it works. Yeah.
Ideally, that's how it works. That's how evolution works, right?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because like comparing it to next year's class, this is a class where like the top end talent is just not great. Like I'd rather be picking 8 than 5 just to feel a little bit better about the value. Now, granted, the best players in the class are still going to go earlier. So like at the end of the day, like being early is going to get you a better chance. But that being said, like, yeah, there's not a whole lot of guys in this where you're like, holy cow, like other than like Ruben Bain, like his freshman year, and like CeCe Moanella, 2 Miami guys and 2 5-star recruits. You look at it and you're like, their freshman years were like that's a future first rounder. But then Bain also had the injury setback his sophomore year, so it kind of like negated any of the momentum he made. But like then you look at next year's class, and it's like you saw Jeremiah Smith step onto a field, and you're like, that's a first round pick. You see Cam Coleman now going to Texas, that's a first round pick. Colin Simmons, edge rusher Texas, that's a first round pick. Arch Manning, that's a first round pick. You start to see Dylan Stewart, edge rusher South Carolina, that's a future top 5 pick. So it's just interesting that you mentioned that a lot of these guys in this year's class, 2nd, 3rd, 4th year, maybe even 5th year bloomers. And then I wonder how that kind of correlates to our rhetoric around like, yeah, that's just not the best year to have like the Jets at number 2. Like, holy shit, they're not a quarterback to take there. So what are you doing? I guess you're taking a linebacker or a receiver, I guess. But you don't really.
Yeah. No one's coming to get. I don't think anybody's going to get that pick.
I love that you brought that point up.
Yeah. I don't think anybody's coming to get the Jets pick, so they're going to have to force that. It's going to be interesting it's interesting to see what they do.
And then you compare that to next year, where we've had a bunch of these dudes right from the jump. Freshman year, that's a dude. And that looks like maybe the best draft class of all time. So it is interesting that you bring that point up. I think you're exactly spot on with it.
Are there? And I know you're a big, you love your defensive players too. So I will give you a moment to vent before we head out of here. Is there anybody else you want to shout out? Any other wide receivers, defensive pass rushers? Anything you want to?
Yeah. And we'll do another preview episode once we get to Mobile. Barring I survive the snowstorm that's coming through the East Coast, it does look better in the forecast. But yeah, real quick, I'll rapid fire a few players that come to mind. Will Lee, cornerback from Texas A&M, known as the Blanket. He sent a blanket to Theo Weiss last year to let him know he's going to get comfortable and make no catches. And Theo Weiss was shut out. So, like, that type of corner, sign me all the way up. I love a dog like that. Chandler Rivers, corner from Duke. That's a slot corner for sure. But, like, that dude is scrappy as all get out. So, he could be like the Upton Stout type this year where just nothing looks overwhelming. I think he could totally be that type of player. Takario Davis, 6'4" corner, transfer from Arizona to Washington. A little stiff in the hips, but a 6'4" corner. I'm always intrigued by that. Likewise, Julian Neal, 6'3" corner from Arkansas. Again, probably a little bit more of like a cover 3 type where you're keeping him linear, but he's got some good man-to-man reps in there as well. Keontae Scott, love him as a nickel, one of the Miami guys that announced that they were going yesterday. Let's see. Zion Young, if anybody was watching the Missouri overtime game with, who was it? Was it Vanderbilt? But he was at the coin toss and he had like a viral moment. Just he's a very exciting personality. He's a fun guy and he loves the game. And he's just Brandon Graham type, hard school, edge setting run defender, and then plays with a ton of power. So he's a fun player to watch too. You got both the Texas Tech edge rushers, Romello Height and David Bailey. To see David Bailey spin move in person is going to be lights out. Both Miami edge rushers, Akeem Mesidor, Ruben Bain. Don't need to say much more about that. I do want to shout this guy out just because he had a down year. TJ Parker's an interesting guy. Power rusher, another really good run defender. Just like outside of the area that is Clemson football, I just want to see what he looks like and see if he can rebuild some of his draft status. Let's see. Let me get some of these offensive guys. I could go on and on and on, and we'll do a preview episode once we get closer. Maxa Hennichor is a guy who just started playing football, I think, 4 years ago. And each year you've seen a pretty huge step up in talent. And he probably had the best tape of anybody against David Bailey. So he's a guy that, like, with a good week, he could be this year's Josh Connerly. And I thought Connerly was a first-round pick before the Senior Bowl, but, like, a Hennichor can take himself from second-round to first-round conversations with a really good week. Austin Barber, he's kind of an interesting tackle from Florida, but kind of more of a day 3 guy just for me personally. Let me see. Cage Casey, interesting potential guard convert. Let me see what else. And then I'll leave you with a quarterback. Garrett Nussmeier, just because he had the abdominal injury, the oblique injury, whatever it was this year, where it just the ball didn't look the same coming out of his hand, and he already didn't have an elite arm. So like to sacrifice anything that wasn't already great is super not ideal. And he went from, if he declares last year, he's probably the number 2 pick, to is he a day 3 quarterback? Is he going to go in the 3rd round? And also, like I said earlier, he's this guy who even this year, his best of moments are throwing with anticipation, timing routes. And now he's about to throw to a bunch of guys he's never thrown to before. So I'm just very curious how Garrett Nussmeier, one, handles the context of the season and why if he had the season that we had hoped for, he's not at the Senior Bowl. So how does he handle that? He got benched midway through the year. So there's a lot of like on-field, off-the-field stuff I'm very curious about with Garrett Nussmeier. He's got a shot to be his highest QB3 in this class with how disappointing this year was. He got benched. His coach got fired in part because of how he's, the body language on the sideline. And he still could be a 3rd-round pick in quarterback 3 this year. It's insane. Depending on what happens with Chambliss, I would have Chambliss QB3 otherwise. But also, here, real quick, last thought. A couple of Miami guys sign on late, Indiana guys sign on late. How cool of a story would it be? I mean, I would love to see Trinidad Chambliss back in college football. But what if we get a notification tomorrow that his lawsuits come up empty and the Senior Bowl has opened up 2 more spots for quarterbacks? One roster is going to get Trinidad Chambliss. One roster gets Carson Beck. I mean, all of a sudden, this becomes like a headline Senior Bowl just because of those 2 quarterbacks showing up too. So it's like Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader almost literally. So
it dramatically changes the landscape, I think, if that happens of this draft.
Because right now I look at the Shrine and Senior Bowl quarterbacks and it's like, well, one's got Klubnik, the other's got Nussmeier. There's no clear advantage. If Chambliss and Beck were to go to the Senior Bowl, I would give them that edge then, mostly because of Chambliss. But that would just be an interesting story. And then just because like Chambliss in and of itself, sorry, we're going into a diatribe here, but he's just in an awkward spot right now. If this lawsuit does not work out, he's so far behind the 8 ball in regards to building his draft stock. And it's just going to like, he can't be at Shrine. Shrine's happening right now. Measurements are going on as we speak. So Shrine's out of the question. So I think we'll hear about that lawsuit by the end of the day tomorrow, being Friday the 23rd. So that will be very interesting to see what the ruling is and then what that means for Chambliss and his draft status. So anyway, so small diatribe aside.
That was beautiful. That was a beautiful run off of players. I feel like you'd love every single player in this draft to a certain extent.
Well, that's the way I look at this. That's how I've always been. I love team building, and there's 1,000 ways each team can go from every decision point they make, right? Like, and I love multiverse type movies and stuff like decisions and the impact they have. So like team building is just that in a real life setting. And I'm always rooting for the player. Like even guys I don't like I don't like Caleb Banks. I don't love Keaton Proctor. No one is hoping they're wrong more than me. Like I want to be wrong about these players. I want them to become future Hall of Famers too. So yeah, no, I love all these guys. I'm hoping the best for them. And I think we've also I think the rhetoric around players being busts has changed a lot over the last 3 years. And it's less players failing themselves and more teams failing players. Yeah. So that's where the team building conversation gets interesting, right? Like drafting a zone scheme fit for a guard and he goes to a gap scheme. Well, that's just not going to work out, right? Or like an example of that would be Parker Brailsford. This 290-pound center, don't ask him to be a gap. Don't send him to the chart. I mean, now you could with Mike McDaniel, but like if Greg Roman's there, that's just not a fit. He's not going to hold his weight. But if he goes now with Mike McDaniel, maybe that could work. He just had a lot of success with Aaron Brewer. So it's all about landing spots and fits, and that's kind of where it's fun to diagnose player team landing spots.
This is the guy that's going to be at the Senior Bowl next week with us. I mean, this is what you guys are going to get. I mean, if sign up for look at
it's free.
God, I don't deserve you on this show. You're amazing. You are amazing. No, listen, guys. Yeah, sign up for 32 beat writers, guys. I mean, you're gonna get a lot of if TJ, he's insane. The guy's insane. Sign up for TJ, please. This offseason is going to be insane. There's going to be so many things happen. TJ is putting out excellent mock drafts every single week. And then we're doing fantasy mock drafts off TJ's mock drafts, off his landing spots, which I mean, like he had Jeremiah Love go to the Kansas City Chiefs before Mel Kiper did. So I'll just throw that out there. I mean, come on now. But yeah, I mean, that's follow us along for next week. We're really excited to go to Senior Bowl. We're going to be doing a lot of great work. TJ's going to be giving a lot of interviews. I'll do whatever I can on the interview side as well. And with that, that's going to be our show. That's going to be our preview. A lot more things to come. Have a good day. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you guys next Monday if there's nothing else coming up, probably with the latest Senior Bowl update. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night. Bye.